Okay, let's buckle up and start building. So we start off by adding a container comp. Let's place it in the middle. It has a width and a height that we're not using because we're using the fill for both width and height, so that if we go one layer up, it just uses all this space, so a width of 1280 by 720. So if you middle mouse button click, you see that in fact it does take this dimensions, which is good. That's all for now for the container. Let's dive in and start placing a panel chop. So if you hit Shift V, you open up the viewer for this parent operator, which is a container. And the fact of a container, or the thing of a container, is that you can use a panel chop inside of it, so you actually obtain some useful information about clicks, left clicks, right clicks, middle mouse button stuff. So you see a lot of channels, but we only need a few of them. So let's go to select and paste in the ones we need, which are L select, R select, inside, UV, the UV and the wheel, but this we will be using later on. For now, let's close this down. And for now, we are only interested in inside U and V. So again, select, chop, let's drag it on top. Channel names, go to inside U and inside V. And next up, let's add a trail chop. Trail, and let's start registering it. So again, Shift V, make it a bit smaller. And if I move my mouse, you'll see in the panel chop it's being registered. We're extracting only the things we need for drawing, which is U and V coordinates, but we are continuously registering it and it's overwriting itself. So let's change some parameters inside of the trail chop. Let's deactivate active. Let's activate grow length, and capture we set it to only when input cooks. So now nothing's happening anymore. Why is this? Because active is set to off. What we want is that when I click, click, and draw a line with each click, I want to register only those curves or those lines that I'm drawing. So what do? We select this channel, L select, and we drag it on top of the activate. So now when I click and release, after the click it is registered, but after the release it stops registering. So only the line segments where we are actually drawing, they are registered, and the other ones are when I just move my mouse, they will not get registered, and this is exactly what we want. Okay, so next we have this data, but this doesn't look like the lines we are drawing. So for this, we will add a limit sub. This allows us to go from chop domain to subdomain. And for this, we need to specify channel X and Y. Channel X is inside U, channel Y is inside V, and there you have it. There's the line we actually drew. So next we continue with a quick rendering setup, geometry, a camera, a render, and let's finish it off. No, that's a reorder, a render, and let's finish it off with a null. We rename it to BG for background. Let's add a line material. Line material, you can drag it on top of the geometry and select the material, or you can select the geometry, go to render, and drag and drop the line inside of the material field. So now you can see that we are getting our line. We can disable the line far color as we are not using any perspective or depth in this drawing. It's just a 2D texture, 2D sheet of paper. So that's more than enough. Let's make it completely white for biggest contrast. So that's it for now. And let's have a look at the sheet we are filling with lines. If we hit Shift V, we don't see anything yet. That's because if we go one layer up, we need to go to the Look tab and we need to tell it, look one level deeper and look for BG. And there you have it. It's represented or visualized. So Shift V again, and that's the line. So now we normally should be able to start drawing. And yes, although there is like quite a big gap between my mouse and what's actually being drawn on the screen. And also I'm actually drawing like a 16:9 aspect ratio or a rectangle, but I'm getting just a square that starts in the middle, it seems. So that's not really looking good. So if I just clean this sheet of paper and draw like a point in the bottom left corner, I see that I'm actually drawing completely in the center. So why is this? This is because inside UV, if you pay attention to these channels, you see from bottom left is 0, 0, top right is 1, 1. So while we are drawing in the bottom left corner, you actually see that the actual drawing is appearing at a half on the U direction and a half on the V direction. So therefore we'll be doing some fixes. So let's make this a little smaller. And a first fix we will be doing for this is insert a math chop. And as we saw that this whole thing is offset by half, we will correct it in here by just subtracting a half. If I draw now, it's already a little closer to my mouse pointer, but not quite there yet. And it's also still looking quite squarish, if that's even a word. So to get it following the line correctly, dead on, there are 2 more fixes, if I'm not mistaken. So for the first one, we will go to the camera. 3 fixes, but still. Okay, first of the 3 fixes is in the View tab. It's in Projection Perspective. We don't need any perspective for now, or not at all, because we're just drawing on a flat sheet of paper, so to say. So this one we can change to orthographic, and it's already looking a bit closer if you look at my drawing, but still not there yet. So we still have this square thing, although I'm actually drawing a rectangle in my 16:9 aspect ratio canvas. So a second fix is inserting another math. Let's go also to multiply add and first to common, because I'm actually working with a 16:9 aspect ratio. And therefore I should be scaling the inside U coordinates by the same aspect ratio. So if we multiply only the inside U channel with 16/9, you'll see that now the inside U channel will be scaled 1.7 times bigger than the U direction, or the V direction, sorry. So now I'm getting close. I'm getting very close. I'll make it a bit bigger. But still, you see that there's a slight gap between my mouse and the actual line that's being drawn. So therefore the final fix should be in camera, setting ortho width also to 16/9. And there you have it. Normally, if I'm correct, and let me clear out this by resetting the trail chop. Now this line is perfectly following my mouse, which is great, but we are not completely finished, of course. There's still a lot of building. So as you can see, each time I draw a line, let's again clear it, draw a line, 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 line. They're all connected to each other, and all this line data is recorded in this single trail chop, which we don't want. We want that each new line is getting its own trail chop, its own line details, so we can modify it later on by moving it to a different place on the canvas, by scaling it up or down. So therefore we want each line to get its own little trail chop. So let's fix that thing next. So for this, let's see, how would we tackle this? So I draw a line, it's registered, that's fine. But if I draw a second line, this part, this newly registered part, should end up in a separate trail chop. So for this, we will and we need to use a replicator. So let's already add this replicator. So replicator, I like to place it close to the crossing or the center of the network. And this looks good. This can go here. The things we want to replicate are mainly these two things, because this holds the line details. So if I will just show you, if I select them, right click and collapse selected, those two operators will be collapsed inside of this base, and automatically an in and an out operator for the corresponding family of operators will be created, so they become available on the input and output side. And of course this one starts complaining because it doesn't find this panel on this level. So in this level, base 1 level, there is no panel 1, so I need to tell it go look 1 level up, and it will find it again. I'll also reset it. Okay, it's fine already. So okay, that's looking good already. I'll place this one neatly above the replicator, because this one will become our template for the replication. And in the replicator, we need to tell, okay, what needs to be replicated. The thing that needs to be replicated is this base. We will call it line 0, as the 0 is often very handy in using parent.digits. If it's 0, then you can use a specific case for the 0, or if it's not 0, like for all the copies we will be making of this one, copies will get item or line 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So all the actual copies other than this template will get a digit other than 0, which will be very handy to use. Okay, so replicator, master operator, this field needs to hold line 0, as line 0 is the template which we are not using to view, but we are using to create copies based on this one. How many copies? Well, we're not copying by a det or dot operator. We will just be creating new copies of this one just by a number. But yeah, okay, we can start incrementing this, and while if we increment it, we go inside of one of them, you see, okay, an exact copy is made, but nothing is being held inside, and nothing useful anyway. Other thing is that now it's laid out in a grid, so it will start taking a lot of place in the network. I'll just want to place it vertically. So now every new line is neatly placed one below the other. Okay, but we don't want to keep sliding this slider up and down to create new copies. No, we want this to be driven by or actions taken on this canvas each time we draw a new line. We want to increment this count, not this count. So a copy is created automatically. So how do we do this? Let's have a look. Each time we click, we see L-select being activated. So this one we will be using. So let's add a select. Let's drag this one and say what channel we want to select. The L-select channel. And let's connect a chop execute so that each time this channel goes from off to on, we can tell it to execute a little line of Python. And this line of Python will need to update or increment a constant, which you can see as a variable of some sort. Let's close this down for now. So this one, let's name it counts, because it will later on hold multiple counts, but for now only one count field or count channel. So let's see. So here I'll paste in a small piece of Python where I say, okay, if the channel name is L-select, which is this one, I already put it here because later on I'll be adding other channels which will trigger some Python, but now I can already say if the channel is L-select, then you should go to the operator counts, which is this one, parameter value 0, which is this one. For now it's 0 because there are 0 copies of the lines, and I drew 0 lines. But if L-select becomes active, then you should increment this one over here. So let's try it out. Shift V for opening the panel. And if I now start drawing lines, you see that the count is incrementing. And now I can just start using this count for the replication. So if we just put the reference on here, the count is 11 and the number of copies will therefore also be 11. Stranger Things. Sorry. And maybe it's also a good idea to already add some shortcuts for cleaning up everything. Otherwise, I always need to come here and drag it down to 0. So I don't want to do this. So let's also add in a keyboard in chop and make it trigger on the W key, but only on W key combined with Shift and Control. So if I'm just typing normally some Python or whatever, I might hit the W key. I don't want all my lines to be removed, but only if I hit Control Shift W, then this little guy will become active and some triggering can take place. So, okay, that's good already. Let's merge these two together so both of them can be handled inside of this chop execute script. So add in a merge, like combine those two, and instead of triggering these callbacks based only on the L-select channel, we will make it look at the merge chop to all of its channels, so not only the L-select but also the KW. So now we can say I want copy some other piece of Python so that it goes a bit quicker. So again, if channel name is L-select, do the incrementing of the count. If the channel is KW, then set the count to 0, meaning that all copies will be removed, which is exactly what we want. So now I can zoom out a little. I can hit Ctrl+Shift+W and the count is set to 0. If I start drawing again, lines, Ctrl+Shift+0, and so on. But I'm still seeing these lines, which is because this master operator, this template operator, whatever, is still registering all my clicks and lines that I'm drawing. So now it's time to tackle this one. I don't want the master comp to be registering anything, so I'll start off by just resetting this one and telling it to only register lines or line movement and so on, not when I select it, but if I selected n middle parent being line 1, my digits being 0 are bigger than 0. So for the master, which is 0, it's not bigger than 0, meaning that if, for the master it is 0, so this will not be true. So therefore I can say else 0. So now for the master, it will not trigger this activation, but for the copies of the master, they will get a digit other than 0, being 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And as it's bigger than 0, the activation of the select will, of the active by the select channel will be able to take place. So if we go up a level again, we remove every line, we start drawing new lines. They are created. If we go in this one, we see nothing is registered, which is good. If we go to another one, we see also nothing is registered. And I think I know why this is. I don't know exactly why, but for some reason this trail chop is not cooking, although if I move and select, okay, now it is. I think it's because we are actually viewing this operator and it's a whole TouchDesigner, how it's built. It's only cooking stuff that you're looking at. If we're one level up, you're actually not looking at it, so it doesn't need to cook or something like this. But anyway, we can force the cooking by going to the parent, not the parent, but the master operator, and just attach like a small cheat after this one. Let's attach a null and say, okay, always cook, which is not super efficient for now, but whatever. Okay, let's remove Ctrl+Shift+W and start adding lines again. Again, master doesn't register anything, which is still what we want. Item 1 is now, okay, it's registering anything. Okay, and then item 2, okay. Item 3, okay, that looks good. That looks good. But something strange, or something which we still don't want, is that if you go in the first one, it has like 3 peaks. If we go to the second one, it has 2 peaks. And if we go to the third one, it has 1 peaks. So what does this mean? This means that the first line that's created, it registers this first line. But also when the second line is created, the first line still registers all the next lines as well, and only the last line will have the details of the last line. So the ones before are still listening to this call fraction for registering line details. So therefore, again, in the master, we go in, we go to this trail chop, and we're going to update this with one little extra. And let's paste it in. So not only if my digits are bigger than 0, but also, and let's paste it in and highlight it, what I've just added in. Here I'm saying, but also if my parents' digits are the same as the current count. So what does this mean? Let's go up again, and for the current line, let's go here. This one is not yet updated with it, so this one doesn't have the end statement. But what it would mean is that this line would only listen to the call for action for recording the line details if my item being 3 is equal to the line count. So only when this becomes 3, then this one will record the line details. But for the first one, first item has a digit of 1. There, 1 and 3 are not equal, so this one will not be registering all these line details as well. So therefore, if I remove everything and make some new lines, 1, 2, 3, you'll see that this line has one line, which you can see here, and the next line has one line, which you can see here, and the next line has also one line, which you can see here. So that's already, and again, looking way better. Better. I don't know. So what's next to fix? Now we see that only this master template thingy is giving its output to this rendering network. But what we want to do is we will disconnect this one. Check, let's disconnect it. I want to say for each newly created copy that we want to connect its output to not a null, but to a merge. So the merge, let's connect it up to the null. But what we want is that we end up with something like this. And there you have all 3 lines being visualized, but this is not happening automatically yet. So if we undo, that's the case we have at the moment. So we go to the replicator callbacks, where we can indicate that for each new operator, so on replicate, this one will be executed. So for see a new ops, so see it is a newly created operator, we can tell it, okay, see output connectors 0 for the first output, and tell it to connect to operator merge 2. So now if we go out, remove everything, and start drawing some lines again, make it smaller, check, and there you have it. Each of them gets connected to the merge automatically. So that's already looking better again. So what you see here is that each line, so let's say the first line is still getting some line detail from the next line, or this next line is still getting some line details from the previous line, which is causing them to be interconnected. So it looks like the first one is, or each of them is getting still some line details being recorded inside of this copy, which is what we don't want. So if we go in and let's see, let's move these out of the way. Now we can add a trim. Okay, so we have a trim, and with this one we can say, okay, here we see the actual jump being made for the first line. there's a jump all the way at the end. So now I could say relative to start end. So from the end sample, I might want to remove one sample, if I'm not mistaken. What did I do? Something changed. Okay, that should look better already. Yes, of course, it's still, this one is still looking at the trail chop, but it should be looking in the meantime at the trim chop. So if we drag this one on top, the line disappears. So how does this come, or yeah, why is this happening? When I draw this line, it's all good, but if I draw the second line, the replication of the second line, so the copying of the master for the second line, is happening just probably a frame or a fraction too late. And this still gives the first one, while the count is still 1, it still gives the first copy the time still to register one sample, and then the count is at 2, and then the second line will become active and this one will take over and start recording. But therefore we need to add these trim chops to prevent each line from registering the first point of the next line, if that makes sense, hopefully. So let's copy this one because we're not in the master now. We will go one level up, go inside of the master and make the change in here. So this is connected, but still we need to place a trim in this one. So therefore, if I start drawing again, and let's maybe first do something small, like for the master, go to common and drag in the master to its own clone master. So now if I change anything in the master comp, like let's say trim goes up, if we go look inside of the item, normally, yeah, the next time if I remove them and I copy them or create them, then this trim will also be a clone of the master. And if I make some modifications in the master, like put it more down and go up and go look in one of those, it will also be reflected inside of those copies, and this prevents me from always needing to remove all the lines and recreate the lines, so that all the changes that I made in the master are actually being taken or applied to those copies. So let's go back to the master and just place this trim nicely in a row. So there you have it. If I activate those viewers and maybe just on this one, yeah, then you'll see all separate lines being connected in the merge and being rendered out in this network with the correct scaling for the lines, being corrected for the aspect ratio and so on. So now I can draw whatever I want, each line being a separate copy. Attention for the replicator. By default, it will be set at 100. So if I reach, like, let's lower it to 10. In this way, you can limit the number of copies. So if I remove everything and I start drawing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But now we're at 10. So number 10, not happening. This will prevent you. But the count is still incremental, but yeah, anyway. Most of the time I put it at 500, yeah, not most of the time. For these little copies, master is not very heavy what's being copied. So if you have something very heavy being copied, be careful with what you, or how much time you copy this, because if you reach 500, there will be 500 copies of this one. Maybe in each of those copies, there will be heavy execution or heavy cooking, and then you should be using a probe component I can show you quickly under tools, maybe techniques. No, it will be tools probably. Yeah, it's just a very handy probe component, which allows you to, if you hit Control P, normally it should open itself up, and it will show you over time what each operator. So this is project one. If you click it, you go inside. This is the container, which is this one we use for drawing. If you click it, we go inside and we see the probe itself, which is doing some heavy cooking as well. But if we go in the master, we click it, we see the cooking that's happening. In the end, we will be adding some additional functionality to this master component that gets replicated. So each of those copies, those replications, will be doing some cooking, and if this cooking becomes too much, the project will have a hard time. You can start using engine comps, whatever, to push it to separate threads, because TouchDesigner is single-threaded, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but anyway, this is just a small intermezzo. Let's remove it for now, because this one is quite lightweight and we don't need to worry about efficiency yet, but there is always a time to start panicking or paying attention to efficiency. But anyway, now you know about the probe component, which can be very useful. In the next tutorial, we will continue from what we have now, and that's being able to add lines near the origin, but we'll add some functionality to give existing lines an offset, so that we're able to clear out the space near the origin for future lines, in this case the blue one that just popped in. But the next time we move things around, the blue lines will get their initial offset, while the orange lines will get their relative offset relative to their previous location. So that again, we can clear up some space near the origin to be able to add future lines. One way to do this is to use the built-in relative UV system, which I'll explain in the next tutorial, but this didn't seem to work out for this project. So instead, I'll show you a nice technique to mimic this built-in relative UV system via a slope connected to a speed chop.